Warning, Star Trek From the Holodeck contains adult language and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not continue to listen.
Lock and load!
Fire!
Holodeck 3 program is reinstated.
Open sesame!
Commander Klingon vessel. We are energizing transporter beam. Now.
Warp 1, engage!
Welcome to Star Trek From the Holodeck. I am Michael Flores, your host. Hi, David. How are you?
Hello. It is a very logical day today.
All right. So we have a lot to talk about. This will be a news discussion today, talking about all the new bits of Star Trek news. This is different. 2019, Dave, as we said in our last show, is going to be a huge year for Star Trek.
Yeah.
And of course, it wouldn't be Star Trek without having some Star Trek trolls crying. People are already saying this is too much. Oh, you're gonna tarnish Star Trek. It's too much. And I'm over here sitting, thinking, hey, motherfucker,
shut the hell up.
Star Trek has been on life support for the past 15 years. It's too much. It's too much.
We haven't gotten a lot of Star Trek. Period.
It's not enough.
Not enough.
Yeah. So that being said, unfortunately, even though we have a lot of great things going on from the television front, it seems like the Star Trek movie front is officially dead.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing.
The Star Trek 4 that has been in the works for the better part of 3 years now. I want to say Simon Pegg posted a screenplay he had written for the fourth movie like 3 months after Star Trek Beyond had hit the theaters. So we were getting excited. I know as Star Trek fans saying, all right, here we go. We're going to move right into the next movie. And then we had the announcement that C.J. Clarkson would be directing the next Star Trek film, followed by Tarantino directing another one. We're going to get 2 back-to-back Star Trek films. But it looks like that is now dead, as C.J. Clarkson has been hired to run the new Game of Thrones prequel TV series for HBO, and there's no way CJ Clarkson could do both. So that's what led to this news story. And then through investigation, many sources have found its way onto the internet saying that the rumors are in fact true. Star Trek movies for the time being have been put on hold, and there are no current plans to move forward with the promoted Star Trek 4 directed by C.J. Clarkson. However, they have not said anything about the Tarantino film, so that could still be in the works, Dave.
I was really psyched to actually see it because Tarantino has been very vocal of how much he wanted to do a Star Trek film.
Yep.
And it was going to be something different and everything else. And we've been talking about this for 4 or 5 years. That Tarantino wanted to do a Star Trek film?
He's had his own thoughts. Yeah, for about 4 or 5 years. He's always had thoughts about how they can reboot Star Trek successfully. And he had mentioned that the biggest problem with Star Trek is that it is stuck on Kirk and Spock. It is a series, a franchise that cannot move forward because the two characters that fans know the most, and not just Star Trek fans know all the characters for the most part, but he's talking about the mainstream fans. And let's be honest, Dave, the mainstream is what matters.
Yes.
We lowly Star Trek fans don't matter as much as the mainstream, because in order to have a successful movie, we already know that us Star Trek fans cannot sustain that. We are not Legion like we used to be.
No, we aren't. And I mean, it's been the franchise, while everyone wants to make the debate about Star Trek versus the one franchise that shall not be named on this show. The sad fact is Star Trek, before Discovery and before everything else, has been on life support.
It has been on life support, and Tarantino has said it's kind of because the mainstream just doesn't know. Everybody, even if you're not a Star Trek fan, let's say you've never watched a Star Trek movie, you know who Captain Kirk is. You know who Spock is. You don't necessarily, you know who Picard is, but you don't necessarily know Riker. You don't know Deanna Troi. You don't know Data. Archer. You don't know Data. You don't know Cisco. You don't know Janeway. Those names are not household names. Yeah. Kirk and Spock are household names. And that's what Tarantino has said is the biggest problem with Star Trek, is that it's a product of its own success with the original series and the movies. And because of that, we find ourselves always going back. That's why we did the Kelvin timeline films. That's why we have Star Trek Discovery, harkening back, using nostalgia, using the things that we know. And I'm not saying that's necessarily bad. I understand this is a business, and you can't make a show that's not going to appeal to the mainstream masses. Otherwise, they will be nothing. That's why we have been on life support for the better part of 15 years or more. So Tarantino has his fingers on the pulse of the cinema and the demos and what needs to be done in order to have a successful movie. I feel like it's tried and true when it comes to him. He understands what you need to do. Yeah. And because he said that throughout the years, it's gained traction. And then finally, about a year ago, he was actually spotted and said in an interview that had nothing to do with Star Trek. They brought up that, hey, you know what? You've been a vocal person, a vocal director when it comes to Star Trek, about your ideas and plans and how you have your own thoughts. And he shared his thoughts, and it got fast tracked into a concept. J.J. Abrams got a hold of him, put together a meeting, and allegedly, according to various Deadline articles, Deadline.com articles and Variety, they hit it off and they all loved his idea, and they were going to fast track this movie once his current film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, was released. Yes. And that's where we were at. We were left to believe that we were about to have 2 back-to-back Star Trek films. So I'm hoping Tarantino is still going to be on board, Dave. Let's say Star Trek 4 as it is now on mothballs. But if you need someone to breathe new life into the movie franchise, Tarantino is that director. Just like JJ did a great job in 2009 with that first movie. Unfortunately, he squandered that success with Into Darkness. But now we need that new breath of life being blown into the Star Trek franchise, and Tarantino is that director that is more than capable of doing that and being that guy. And if you look at like what Star Trek is now paced on doing, like the plans that basically have been laid out by Alex Kurtzman, who's been spearheading like Star Trek since I think the last 2 years. Kurtzman has been saying, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, everything's going to be different. We're going to try to actually put Star Trek in a new light. We're going to try to show people that the franchise is more than just like what you said, Spock and Kirk. We're going to focus on Discovery, give Discovery a new tone. We're going to bring back Picard, do a Picard series that is different, apparently, than anything that any Star Trek person has had. And then you look at the track of the short treks, how those have been very well received, and Kurtzman's been really spearheading that type of storytelling. I think that basically Tarantino would look at this and say, this is what I kind of envision for Star Trek. Do something different. Right. While Kurtzman's saying, I'm not going to forget Kirk and Spock. I'm going to forget that nostalgia. I'm going to still tell different type of stories that involve brand new characters or characters we've never ever seen before. Like what they've done with like characters like Harry Mudd, who is an original series character. But if you look at it, they've done a fantastic job with short treks and Discovery in those episodes, taking that original character and adding more substance to him. Yeah, I agree. So I'm hoping that basically Tarantino watching what Kurtzman's doing is like saying, okay, my Star Trek is still on pace because I wanted to actually do a Star Trek that was completely different and outside the box. The only problem, Dave, that they're going to run up against is that CBS is in charge of the TV series front currently, and Paramount is in charge of the movies. And that's where the disconnect comes. And yes, they're not going to destroy canon because they're kind of ran by separate entities at the moment. I'm hoping that I believe there's a lawsuit in the works that will help connect the franchises again.
Yes.
Because they kind of need to be all under one umbrella. And thankfully, Alex Kurtzman has worked on the Kelvin movies, so that's a plus. Even though he's worked on those movies, doesn't mean that, again, they're not connected. They're two different studios. But that being said, Dave, there is room for Tarantino to flex and stretch his creative muscles. So I'm hoping they stick to that, because I do strongly feel like that will be the movie that would help breathe new life back into the series, 10 years after JJ did it with the 2009 reboot. But that being said, Dave, Star Trek Picard series that was announced a couple months back could connect to the Kelvin movies. And this is what I want it to connect, honestly.
Yes, same here.
And that's why I'm hoping Paramount and CBS can put their differences to the side and get down to business, because the concept of the series, which was released recently, appears that it would align with the J.J. Abrams 2009 reboot timeline. And that has me completely excited. Now, Dave, this article that I'm going to read is actually an article you did for our website, raymandigitalmedia.com.
Yep.
It's very detailed. If people want to read it more in depth, then please head over to raymandigitalmedia.com and you can check that out. But the article is what we know. It's titled, I should say, What We Know About the Star Trek Picard series so far. We have a lot of information, and I'm surprised, Dave, they have released this much information on a series that's not set to even air until...
that they haven't even shot yet.
Yes. The writing process, they're well underway when it comes to the writing process, but that doesn't mean most TV shows don't release these types of concepts or story concepts of a series when we're this far out from the show airing. We still have, I think, until the end of 2019 is the rumored release strategy for the Picard series. But so it does look like the Star Trek universe is going to connect. We're hoping. It takes place after the destruction of Romulus. That was the first bit of information that was released about the Picard series.
Yes.
In an interview with Hollywood Reporter, executive producer Alex Kurtzman said that Picard's life was radically altered by the dissolution of the Romulan Empire. This is a reference for those people out there that may not remember. This is a reference to an event from the first J.J. Abrams reboot movie, which started the whole entire thing.
Yes.
The 2009 Star Trek film. But also it's a continuation of the Romulan storyline from the last TNG film, Nemesis, that aired in 2002. Now, in 2009, with the introduction of the Kelvin timeline, the story starts off with Spock trying to save the Romulan Empire from a supernova catastrophe while the Romulan Empire is crumbling, trying to save the Romulan Empire, but they're dying, which he fails, as we know, from the 2009 Kelvin timeline movie.
Yes.
And he ends up getting sucked into a black hole with Nero and the Narada, and that's when the split timeline occurs. Now, by Star Trek chronology, this event is placed roughly 8 years after we see Picard in Nemesis.
Yes.
In Nemesis, we are introduced to the character of Shinzon, who turns out to be, of course, the clone of Picard. Shinzon tells Picard about the beginning of the end of the Romulan Empire, which was a plot point throughout the entire film. Now, we also have to remember, Dave, we're not making huge leaps here.
No.
And just creating assumptions. The original script for the 2009 movie included the Countdown comic story.
Yes.
Originally, the beginning was going to have Picard and I believe Geordi.
Yes. It was Geordi
working
Picard
with Spock to help save Romulus from being destroyed by the supernova. That got cut for whatever reason, and they used it as a prequel comic instead, which people need to read it because it's absolutely fantastic.
And it really does give a lot of background to the 2009 movie, which honestly, I wish they could have gotten the comic book shot. But I
do too. Even
I think that it would have just been too much.
I think Patrick Stewart probably had a big part of that. Like, I in his mind, he was done with Star Trek at that time. Why would he want to come back for a 15-minute role? And I think ultimately that's why it was cut. If the rumors are to be believed that in fact it was originally a part of the first draft of the script, regardless, there is a connection there, and it makes for a lot of exciting theories, Dave, that this could in fact be the series that connects the Kelvin timeline to our prime timeline, even if it's not a main narrative, whereas they actually talk about it. We, as Star Trek fans, will know exactly what the writers are trying to do. The moment they describe the difference in Picard's life and we see it on screen and they bring up how everything's changed for him after the destruction of the Romulan Empire, right?
Yes.
We already know why that happened and how it happened based on the 2009 movie. So that being said, even if it's something as small as that, the narrative cherry on top, if you will, that I think will do the trick for a lot of Star Trek fans that want that connection stated overtly, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because for a lot of Star Trek fans also, when you talk about the character of Jean-Luc, the one piece of unfinished business that Picard had was
banging Beverly Crusher. Right? Is that
no?
What,
he did. I think we can confirm that he banged Beverly Crusher many times.
Is Wesley Crusher actually his kid?
I remember that they were talking about that. But the one piece of unfinished business that he had was dealing with the Romulans. Because if you look at the last couple of seasons of TNG, the Romulans played a big point in being the quote unquote enemy of Picard, or the nemesis, the driving force of Picard in the later seasons. And Nemesis was supposed to give that little let's tie this up as a nice little bow, but instead it added more questions than anything else to Picard's feelings toward the Romulans, because like Picard wanted to really help them out instead of actually trying to fight them. And people have to understand, Picard as a character, he's not the type of person like Kirk in the Klingons, Kirk was like, let them die.
Yeah, he can never forgive them for the death of his boy.
Picard, it's different. Picard is the type of person that basically, he is the constant diplomat. He's always been the peace treaty person. And he wants to, Picard's characteristic is he wants to save the universe and show that humanity is good, right? What better way than to actually extend the olive branch to one of the Federation's deadliest ally, or not allies, but enemies, and extend a peace treaty to them?
Yeah, dude, there's a lot there. And
there's a lot.
I love what they did towards the tail end of Star Trek with the Romulans. I felt like Nemesis, if there was just a few minor tweaks to the script, I felt like that movie could have been fantastic.
Oh, it could.
Because they're all the right ingredients to have a fantastic, intimate story were there. In fact, the greatest moments of that movie were the ones that, of course, the connection between Data and Picard, it was such a great moment, and the death of Data and what he did for Picard.
Yes. But
also coming face to face with himself as the bad guy, as the villain, in the face of Shinzon. It was just such a great way to have Picard essentially face himself and his potential demons. And I felt like that was, even though it was supposed to be the end, there is a lot of unsaid, I felt. And the way they're tackling this TV series, they're not forgetting Nemesis. They're not trying to do a soft retcon and say, let's pretend that movie didn't exist. They're actually using the good things based on what we're reading. It seems like they're using the strengths of that movie to help build Picard's story in the wake of this Romulan catastrophe.
Yeah.
All right. So also, the Picard series is allegedly going to have a much different tone than Discovery. And it needs to. It's a different show.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of how Discovery will coincide with the Picard series, in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Kurtzman explained it's an extremely different rhythm than Discovery. He says Discovery is a bullet. Picard is a very contemplative show. It will find a balance between the speed of discovery and the nature of what Next Generation was, but I believe it will have its own rhythm. More grounded, he says, is not the right way to put it, because season 2 of Discovery is also very grounded.
Yeah.
It will feel more real world. And he says, without revealing too much, people have so many questions about Picard and what happened to him. And the idea we get to take time to answer those questions in the wake of the many, many things he's had to deal with in Next Generation is really exciting. I can't believe they're doing this, honestly, Dave. Every time I know this sounds so stupid, but I have to pinch myself every time I hear about the Picard series, because this is just something I never would have expected for us to ever see.
Yeah, because like everyone basically said that it would be really difficult to continue the Next Generation series after Nemesis, especially after the way the series ends with all good things must come to an end, with the storyline of Picard and Q wrapping up. They were like going, well, where do we take the story of this crew anywhere else? And it was something that me and you even discussed in some of our past discussions about like how Next Generation ended. It was really perfect. However, there were a lot of questions left that were unanswered.
Yeah, and that's something you put in the article dealing with Picard and his unfinished business. And I agree wholeheartedly. And again, in the same Entertainment Weekly interview, Alex Kurtzman actually talks about this and says that the new series will finally give fans the opportunity to get some answers about the beloved character. And he says, again, without revealing too much about it, people have so many questions about Picard and what happened to him. And the idea we get to take time to answer those questions, in the wake of Next Gen, and of course what happened in Star Trek Nemesis and how it left fans wanting more from the character of Jean-Luc. A lot of fans have also been hesitant to see the handling of Jean-Luc after the critical reception of Nemesis.
Yeah.
And those fears, however, have been lessened by the care and attention the series has received, not only from Alex Kurtzman, but also Patrick Stewart himself, and how directly involved Patrick Stewart is with the show, because Patrick Stewart said the only way he would return is if this series is something completely different than Next Generation, completely different for the character of Picard. This has to be a true second chapter for Picard. This has to be a true new story, and there's got to be some tragedy behind it. There's got to be tragedy. Otherwise, once again, why do we want to disrupt the way we sent Picard off?
Yes, because you got to remember at the end of Nemesis, it did kind of end tragically for Picard because, number one, Data died. And yeah, there was that hope that basically, B4
yes.
Had Data's memories.
Data's other brother?
Yeah. Had Data's memories, and he would grow into becoming Data again. But on top of that, there was the tragedy of Picard coming to the realization that Shinzon, in a lot of ways, was right. The Federation will die. Like, one of my favorite parts of Nemesis was that monologue that Tom Hardy as Shinzon gives Picard, and he tells how the Federation's like the dying Roman Empire and how it's crumbling around him. But Picard, because of his positivity and his constant, I forgot what the word he used was, but he like just shit all over, like, in a lot of ways, he shit all over the Roddenberry belief, which is we all will grow into a peaceful race. And Shinzon's like, no, Federation got strong. They're going to fall like every other great empire in known history. That's not going to be forever.
Which is very realistic. And I know there are some naysayers out there, Star Trek fans, who refuse to budge, and they're such sticklers for the optimism of Star Trek. And by all means, let's keep that optimism in there, but let's challenge that optimism as well. Let's challenge what we know of the Federation. And I'm not saying turn them into some, dark, seedy, desperate government that's struggling to stay alive and maintain control and power. But how awesome would it be to see the very first moments of Star Trek Next Generation, going back to Encounter at Farpoint, where Q questioned, are they ready? Are humans ready to explore the galaxy?
Yeah.
And even Enterprise explored that, and how they were way in over their head, and how the Enterprise and Archer and the crew had no idea the problems they would confront once they decide to travel into the stars. And not only that, but also kicking over Hornet's Nest, and how they didn't realize how different other cultures are. And that was a beautiful thing. One of my favorite things about Enterprise and the relationship between Archer and DePaul, and how she was continually telling Archer, hey, you don't understand. Not everyone is like humans. Not everyone's like you. Not everybody wants to talk to you. Not everybody wants to be like, hey, buddy, how are you? Everybody is different. And it goes back to Encounter at Farpoint, where Q even questions Picard, are you ready? Are you worthy to travel the stars? And it's a good question, especially from an omnipresent type of character like Q or the Q Continuum, where they know. So are you guys ready to run into problems? Are you willing to run the risk that as you travel, this can actually challenge you as a people? You have finally reached a golden age or a renaissance, right, of the human culture. Now, are you willing to throw that at risk by traveling the stars and possibly confronting enemies that would challenge your enlightened views? And that's exactly what happened when you see shows like Deep Space Nine, and how you have problems dealing with the Dominion from other galaxies. Just because you're evolved doesn't mean everyone else you come up against is going to be.
Exactly.
So to see that we're actually getting to that, and that all the things we've seen, the Borg attacks, the Dominion, the Romulans, Shinzon, all these things are taking a toll on the Federation. And it's always been a question mark for many Star Trek fans. Well, what's happening now? Is the Federation going to recoup from this Dominion war? Are they going to recoup from the Borg attacks? Are they going to recoup from this Romulan? What's going to happen with the political landscape with Romulus being destroyed or being the dissolution of the Romulan Empire? What's going to happen? And this series, I feel like, is in a lot of ways, Dave, it's a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense because it can tackle all of those things, and it can benefit from being the only series to be running at that time frame.
Yeah. And honestly, it's the only character that basically I think is perfect to tackle this time frame, because the way that Jean-Luc just connects to every single Star Trek fan. As I was researching this article, it's amazing to me that everyone constantly says, "Oh, Kirk or Picard." In actuality, I've been finding
the question is DePaul or 7 of 9.
DePaul or 7 of 9,
and I just say both. Why choose?
But the one thing I've been noticing with a lot of like fans is like Picard just harkens to everybody, even Kirk fans, because like he embodies everything that we want to believe in that Gene Roddenberry put. You know, a person who looks at the bright side of everything, is a diplomat, works with anybody. Like, it doesn't matter if he's from their culture, he will try to be understanding and tolerant of that culture and respect that culture. And we all want to be Picard as a human being, because he's honestly a good character. He's a good person and someone that we should strive after. And that's why when they decide to tackle this timeline, there's only one character that I thought about as I was writing this article that could do it is Picard, because the way that we left him off in Nemesis, a lot of people felt that Nemesis ruined Picard, because Picard at the end of it looked like it was a tragedy, like this is Picard's failure. Well, now with the series, this is Picard's unfinished business. This is how he can again lead us all to believing that he can do this amazing thing by helping the one enemy that has always been his enemy, but he's going to help them. And that's why I think that I'm really, really excited to see what Patrick Stewart can do, because character drama wise, Patrick Stewart can make you care about the most minute and irrelevant characters of all. But when it comes to Jean-Luc Picard, I have no doubt that the series with Patrick Stewart's blessing is going to be a home run.
Yeah, without a doubt, Dave. And I think it's going to be a mainstream success. And I feel also like it's possibly going to bring in the naysayers and people that have been on the fence for Star Trek Discovery. I think they're going to see a pretty big spike in their subscriptions.
Yes.
And I'm hoping people subscribe and not pirate, because if you pirate, then the shows are going to get canceled, assholes. So thank you. All right, let's go to a quick break, Dave. And then when we get back, we're going to jump into more news. We'll be right back.
Double dumbass on you! Fire everything!
The Rain Man Show. The Rain Man Show.
Exactly. See, Thomas, you were on the right track.
Thank you.
Because that's the first thing I thought. This is a story worthy of Andrew. Who else pees in their mouth in the shower?
Oh my God.
So here's what happened. I just got off of a super long, like 13-hour work week, right? Running off of like 3 hours of sleep. Wake up, get in the shower, skipping some time. I just let go in the shower, right? Pee in the shower.
Who hasn't, right?
Animals.
This is happening.
You guys, wait, hold on. Let's tackle this first. You guys pee in the shower?
I've done it every now and then.
Who doesn't pee in the shower?
Wow.
Supposed to.
Kate, thank you, Raina. Thank you. Finally.
Don't let Raina fool you. Raina pees in the shower.
That was one time, and you said you wouldn't tell.
For more Rain Man, visit RainManShow.com.
Have you missed an episode of DC on CW? If you have, this is what you've missed.
Yeah. Sure, son. And story over. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And scene.
Fuck, we're gonna need like 35 more minutes of cape shit.
Oh boy. Wow. Would that have been a doozy of an episode? Tell you what. Why didn't they just do that?
Training montage, cape.
You. Throw my cape now. Try to get some bad guys down on the ground and throw them up into the air and knock someone out. Really good on an improv.
I am beyond impressed right now.
I know.
Good job.
Good
job.
Thanks, guys. That would have been.
I don't even know what to do now. I feel like we're done.
Well, it's over. Bye. Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Mike, I got the next promo.
Don't miss DC on CW every week on Rain Man Digital, covering topics from Supergirl, The Flash, Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow.
Free stuff is awesome, but free stuff that will spice up your bedroom is even better. Just go to adamandeve.com and select almost any one item for 50% off, and then we'll load on the free stuff. Just enter this very exclusive code, DEAL30, at checkout, and you'll get 10 tantalizing free gifts, including a sexy item for him, a special toy for her, and a third item you'll both enjoy. And for your viewing pleasure, 6 free spicy movies on DVD. Plus, free shipping! Always sent in discreet packaging. So go to adamandeve.com now. Get 50% off plus 10 free gifts when you enter the exclusive offer code DEAL30. Again, that's DEAL30, because without it, no free stuff. That's DEAL30 at adamandeve.com.
Energize.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Star Trek from the Holodeck. If you missed any part of this broadcast, you can always find us on Stitcher and iTunes. Just search Star Trek from the Holodeck. Not just Stitcher and iTunes now, Dave. We're actually on Google Play as well as Spotify. And I'm really liking the Spotify application and how that works. Very smooth and sleek. So everyone check it out, subscribe, leave us reviews. All right, so Dave, there's going to be a Section 31 series. And I can tell you how I feel about that. I'm excited. There were some trolls bitching, saying that, Section 31, that's going to destroy the optimism of Star Trek.
You sit down.
It's called intellectual thought. It's called intellectual thought. You challenge yourself. Section 31, if anything, could be a show that challenges the ideals. That's how you strengthen whether or not a society or culture or an idea will work.
Yes.
Or does work. You challenge it and then you overcome it. So I would love to see the Federation possibly mulling over some issues that may be unpleasant for a lot of Star Trek fans. And those of people that may not know Section 31, shame on you, but they are essentially, very easily said, they're essentially the CIA of the Federation. Right?
Yeah.
Espionage, counterintelligence. Now, the news is that Michelle Yeoh will star in a Star Trek spinoff about Section 31. Yes, Michelle Yeoh from Discovery is getting a Star Trek spinoff about Section 31. 2019, as we said, is shaping up to be the biggest and best year for Star Trek news in decades. Literally, just a few months back, Alex Kurtzman announced a complete market saturation with a new Star Trek series centered around Captain Picard and Discovery's second season leading the charge. Now, Dave, just when we didn't think it can get any better, CBS All Access announced earlier today that they have greenlit announced earlier this month, I should say, that they have greenlit yet another Star Trek spinoff series. This one, of course, focusing on Michelle Yeoh's character from Discovery and the Starfleet CIA-type secret organization known as Section 31. Dave, do you have any hesitations about this series, or are you 100% ready to rock?
No, I'm 100% behind this idea of actually a Star Trek series that deals with Section 31, because it's one of those things that basically not a lot of people talk about, because just like what you said, they're afraid that it ruins the optimism of the Star Trek universe.
But that being said, Dave, there are people who are sticklers for that. I don't even want to say purist, Dave, because I'm a purist. I feel like these are just people who are lost or trapped in a time that has passed. You need to change Star Trek up. If you want it to survive, you cannot have the same show. Not every show needs to be the same. Yeah. And not every show needs to be optimistic. It's no different than saying, let's look at another franchise. Let's look at Marvel. Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy is very lighthearted and fun. The last Avengers movie was very dark, brooding, and sad. Now imagine if Marvel decided to make every single movie they make identical and the same. Now, you could be true to your continuity, you could be true to your themes, you can be true to your story, but you cannot make it the same. Audiences will grow very tired of your show very quickly.
Exactly.
And same thing could be said about Star Trek. You need to challenge the ideology of your show. And very few franchises have an ideology, and I would say Star Trek is one of those. They do have an ideology, and you don't want to run the risk of destroying that, but you can challenge it. You can challenge the optimism.
Yeah.
You can make a show that maybe is the anti-optimism. It doesn't mean you're throwing caution to the wind and you're forgetting Star Trek, what Star Trek's all about, but this is a different show. Why must every show be exactly the same? It doesn't need to be. So I'm hoping we get something very, very different with Section 31, something that does challenge the ideals of the Federation, something that makes us second guess, something that makes us think, something that you can form a type of philosophy on.
Yes.
And then prove why maybe these aren't the best actions that these individuals are making. Now, the show will be written or run by Bo Yeon Kim and Erica Lepolt, both of which currently wrote currently write, I should say, for Star Trek Discovery, and have written an episode of Star Trek Short Trek. It's one of the better ones, I believe. Actually, all of them were pretty damn good, but I believe they were the ones that wrote Calypso.
Yes.
There's a lot of unknowns still with this series. We don't know exactly what to expect, but I feel that with Section 31, even if we don't know what to expect with the story itself, I think we can expect that this is going to be a show dealing with espionage, right?
Yes.
I mean, why else would you have a show dealing with Section 31?
The way I saw it, I thought about it was, I thought when they were talking about Section 31 as a series, I literally thought we might get something like a tone of X-Files, where we deal with stuff that basically is off the beaten path. Because that's what the Section 31 did.
Like the bizarre and unknown?
The bizarre unknown, the darker elements of the Star Trek universe. Which, I'm sorry, Star Trek fans, there are darker elements to the optimistic universe. There's just been so many fans out there that just want to forget about some of the really darker moments in Star Trek history. You know, like there was in the original series, the episode with the Nazis.
Yeah. And
no one wants to talk about that, but that was a good episode, and it was a serious episode.
Yeah.
And then Star Trek TNG, where have you forgotten like all the dark episodes that dealt with, let's say, Klingon religion, Worf's loss of his son? That all that stuff was really dark and very serious in tone.
Yeah, I just think we need to let go what we think we know about Star Trek and allow the show to breathe and stretch its legs so that it can grow and survive. Because if we try to stick to the same old rigid rules that some of these over-the-top zealots want, the series or this franchise will continue to die and it will not survive.
That's why I actually just found a recent comment from Alex Kurtzman talking about the future of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually says, Star Trek boss Alex Kurtzman said that in a recent interview, they have learned from the mistakes made from previous spinoffs, including such as Deep Space Nine and Voyager.
There was
Enterprise.
No mistakes in Deep Space Nine. Silence, Kurtzman.
What we're planning on is I want to make sure that each show is a different and unique proposition to the universe, he stressed. And that's the whole point. Make Section 31 totally different. It has to deal with something totally different than what we've seen in Star Trek.
Yeah.
If you're going to deal on those darker elements, yes, give me that. I want to actually see them do that because it's a part of the Star Trek universe that has been unexplored. It's always been hinted at.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like that this is the show we need, Section 31. I've always said, Dave, that Star Trek, I'd love to see a show that doesn't have to do necessarily with the Federation, but we have a giant, robust, or lush mythos to Star Trek. The universe is so vast, and yet we always want to focus on the optimistic side of a Federation. We always want to focus on the optimistic side on board a Federation ship. And yes, I love all the Star Trek we've gotten. Even the ones that people don't like, the TV shows, I can find good in all of them.
Yeah.
It's time for something a little different. We've been there, done that. We have to grow. And I have said for years, for at least 15, 16 years now, that I would love to see a series that has nothing to do with Starfleet necessarily, or the Federation. What if we did a show dealing with the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Empire, and Section 31 is probably the closest we're going to get to it at this time.
Yeah.
A show completely different that doesn't necessarily have the same rules of a story that has to take place, or a story that has to be told from the eyes of a captain of a Starfleet vessel.
Yeah. And honestly, dude, that's why I am really excited about Alex Kurtzman's role in bringing Star Trek back as a franchise, because he has been spearheading this whole thing about, we want to do something different. We want to reinvigorate the franchise, because just like we mentioned in the past, in the beginning of this show, Star Trek was on life support. Star Trek Beyond hit, it didn't do too well, and then it like almost flatlined.
Almost, Dave. It was dead. Star Trek, it was dead. Let's just be honest. It was dead. 2005, it was gone. It wasn't until 2009 when finally we're like, okay, we're back.
We're back.
Here we are. So Star Trek needs this. And there were some people that were already complaining, of course. And I had a discussion with a few of them, and I think I won a few of them over. They were complaining about the spinoffs and saying it's just too many, too fast, that they're going to burn out Star Trek fans. And I'm like, they're not going to burn me out as long as they're good. Now, if they were a bunch of TV shows that were shitty, then yeah, you're going to burn me out. But Star Trek has been on life support for 15 plus years. You're not going to burn out any Star Trek fans. We need shows. And also, Kurtzman is actually pretty smart about this. He needs to give an adrenaline injection straight into the hearts of not just the Star Trek fans, but the mainstream fans as well.
Yes.
So that people will come and watch this show or these shows and subscribe to CBS All Access. And that is a fear of mine. I honestly hope that they find a way to release. I know it's not going to happen. And I'm a little torn, Dave, because I do like that Star Trek is on CBS All Access because there's no rules in terms of censor boards. And you can have your TV 14 episodes. And then if the story dictates that you need a little more intensity, then you can go there.
Yes.
Because that's how I feel as a writer. Like, I don't feel like you need violence. I don't feel like you need sex. I don't feel like you need certain mature elements. But if the story needs it, if it dictates that there might need to be a more intense moment, then let's not hold back. Let's deliver it. And I that was one of the strengths for me for the last season of Discovery, that not every episode was TV mature. You had various episodes that were TV 14, but when they needed to turn the heat up, they went there. On regular TV, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. But there's a catch-22 here, Dave. If you're on network television, you're going to reach millions and millions and millions of more people. CBS is one of the largest networks in the world. And you're putting out these shows on a platform that's probably only represents a fraction, a very small fraction of the actual CBS viewers.
Yeah.
So how do you expect your Star Trek shows to grow and attract new demos? Because let's be honest, the only people that are going to subscribe to CBS All Access to watch Star Trek Discovery are people like you and I.
Yes.
Are people who are already Star Trek fans. Very few people are going to see the promo on Facebook or on CBS and say, "Oh, a new Star Trek series. I'm not really a Star Trek fan, but I'm gonna go ahead and dump $7 and watch this show." It's just not going to happen.
No.
The only way they're going to be able to draw in new audiences is if the show is made available to everyone for free on CBS, so that people can say, "Oh, I'm going to check this out." And that's how they're going to grow their audience, Dave. Maybe they can do something like a 2-year delay so it doesn't undermine what they are trying to accomplish on CBS All Access, and they can maintain, all of these TV shows they want to do without
maintain the momentum.
Right, because they're not going to be able to maintain any of this without adding more fish to the pond.
Yeah. And we've discussed about it before, about how we understand that basically the times have changed to basically people going to streaming services. But you're right. I mean, Kurtzman has to find a way to inject the mainstream audience to get interested in Star Trek again.
Or CBS All Access can focus on maybe producing other high profile TV shows for CBS All Access, like maybe gain the rights to, I don't know, something big, a comic book that was popular, something that will bring in more subscribers. And then those subscribers will be like, well, what else is CBS All Access
doing?
Yeah, then suddenly you have the whole Netflix effect. It's the reason why these Marvel shows on Netflix do so well. If Marvel just opened up their own streaming service, they are without a doubt going to cut down their audience, because the only people that are going to subscribe to a Marvel specific streaming service are going to be fanboys, going to be fan nerds. That's it.
Yeah.
They're not going to be the bulk of the mainstream. The reason why these shows have done so well on Netflix is because everybody has a Netflix subscription, and your mother, your uncle, your cousins, your best friend, the person at the office has watched the Marvel shows because it's on Netflix. So CBS All Access is in a little bit of a conundrum here, or I should say Star Trek is in a little bit of a conundrum here if they hope to grow. So if they did like a 2-year delay where they keep releasing their shows, but maybe they release the first season of Discovery on CBS like late at night, it might actually help build the audience, a new audience, because let us not forget that the Star Trek audience is an aging demo.
It is.
It is an aging demo, and that's why it struggled. So, any other thoughts on this spin-off series with Michelle Yeoh?
Honestly, dude, I'm with this series. I know, just like what you said, there have been naysayers, but I'm really excited to see what she can do. Georgiou was one of the highlights of first season, especially when she goes from Captain Georgiou, the beacon of hope of Discovery,
to the complete opposite.
To the complete opposite. And I was really pleasantly surprised how Michelle Yeoh was able to pull that off and make both characters really strong and unique and very, very charismatic.
I mean, they can also, Dave. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But like with Michelle Yeoh, I really do want to see her lead a show and see what she can do, because like, yeah, there's been the biggest question that I've always had about Discovery toward the end is, where is this Empress Georgiou going to go? She's known as a mass murderer. She's from the mirror universe. She looks at everyone and basically is very snarky to the way that they look at life, their optimistic ways. She's perfect for Section 31. She is absolutely perfect because her ideals match to the statement of Section 31 is, you guys don't know what it takes to get to that perfect ground that you live on. And that's why I would say the more that we're getting closer to the Section 31 series, this might actually overtake my hype of Discovery, because you're dealing with a character that basically was an absolute all-star in the first season.
If they're smart, they're going to do an MCU type thing and have a connected universe, which they already are, obviously, with these shows. I mean, that's the cool thing about Star Trek. Star Trek never gets credit because they've been doing this connected universe for 50 years.
Yeah.
Well, let's be 30 years, because let's say TNG, right?
Yes.
The 80s is really what connected that or created that connected universe. But Star Trek has been doing that forever. They have the Voyager, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, the movies, all feeding into each other, and the things that happen in the TV show is relevant in the movies and vice versa. So Star Trek knows how to do it. It's worked before in the past. So I wouldn't mind seeing Section 31 bring in some guest appearances from people from Discovery. And vice versa. Once the Section 31 series starts off, I know there was a rumor, which I'm hoping is not true, Dave, but there's a rumor that Star Trek Discovery may not even air until after Discovery ends.
Oh, you mean the Section 31?
What did I say?
You said Discovery.
I'm sorry. That doesn't even make sense. That the Section 31 TV series may not even air until after Discovery has ended, and I find that a bit silly. Yes, Michelle Yeoh is amazingly attractive and steamy, but I think she's like late 50s.
Yeah, she's
so you're gonna wait until she's in her 60s to give her an action role? I mean, it's a little weird. But this article, I'm gonna read from the article. The article is taken from Digital Spy. Star Trek's Georgiou spinoff with Michelle Yeoh. Yeoh might not air until Discovery has ended. Michelle Yeoh's Star Trek spinoff series may not launch for a while. An offshoot centered on Yeoh's character was previously announced, but CBS All Access executive Julie McNamara revealed that they have no plans on rushing it out. Okay, well, don't rush it out. You're working on the Picard series.
Exactly.
That makes sense. The series is in development with no date, and McNamara told The Wrap that it could be until Star Trek Discovery finishes before Yeoh's spinoff airs.
Which would make sense because we're going to see Georgiou in the second season of Discovery. We know this. In fact, I believe she's in the next episode.
Yeah.
So,
Dave, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that Next Generation, Deep Space Nine ran at the same time for a couple of years.
Yes.
Deep Space Nine and Voyager ran it for a couple of years at the same time. I don't find a problem with 3 shows running consecutively. You have Star Trek Discovery in the fall or winter. You have Discovery in the spring, or Picard in the summer. You have Section 31 in the spring. You could make it work.
You can make it work, but here's the thing. It has to work just like what we've always said with any TV show. It has to work within the narrative. We don't know how Discovery Season 2 ends.
Right. Well, I feel like if they have foresight, and they can definitely make it work, but also Section 31 could also be a show that doesn't really run the risk of interfering with anything because it's all behind the scenes type stuff.
It's all behind the scenes stuff.
So on paper, this executive says that on paper, she's like, when I look at the schedule, theoretically laying it out on my desk, it does not feel like it's one after another. Some of these can be considered as replacements as opposed to additions. These Trek shows take a lot of incubation because they're very prep heavy, visual effects heavy. We're seeing it more as we're getting a good jump on making sure that there is a good fulsome stream of Trek material. I don't know.
As I said,
why announce Section 31 when Discovery's barely entering into its second season? I feel like they announced Section 31 and Picard because they're trying to let people know, hey, Star Trek is just fine.
Yes.
Why don't you guys subscribe to CBS All Access and check out Discovery? Because despite what all of you are saying out there, some of the naysayers, not all of you, some of the naysayers, Star Trek Discovery isn't going anywhere, and Star Trek isn't going anywhere under Kurtzman's control.
That's why the only thing that basically comes in my head, and it's not like a dread feeling, it's more or less kind of like this, okay, now I'm really psyched to see what's the ending of Star Trek Discovery in the second season, because let's just say, okay, I don't think they've actually announced if there's a third season.
You don't think McNamara has just clued all of us in accidentally that Discovery is over after season 2?
Well, dude, we know that something happens to Discovery.
Yeah, but why would you?
Remember, Calypso actually stated Discovery was found derelict and just abandoned.
There could be another Discovery ship, Dave. There's been multiple Enterprises, so simmer down. Hey guys, we're going to go ahead and get rid of this Discovery because the technology on board doesn't make sense, the continuity. Let's get a new one. Let's get a new ship, subpar, that has old technology.
Old technology on it.
Yeah. You are right. Something's going to have to happen to the ship before the show ends. But I mean, if again, season 2, if the season premiere of season 2 means anything, or it says anything, it definitely says that the show's going in a different direction. So I don't think Discovery is running the risk of being canned or canceled. Why have a show and have it planned? Why start a show and have it planned for 3 years? Unless they're possibly going back to Brian Fuller's idea, where this idea of Discovery was only going to be one season. It was going to be an anthology where every season is something different. So if they have plans to do that, where Star Trek Discovery will change its crew and it'll be something totally different and it goes back to that anthology type idea, then possibly that would make more sense to what this McNamara executive is talking about.
Because I just remembered that too when you brought that up, because remember a long time ago, Fuller's idea was to actually say one season it was going to be focused on one crew. Next season was another crew. Next season was another crew. To give it that different feel to it. The thing that has me really psyched is like, if that is true, what the hell is going to happen to Burnham?
I know. All right, Dave. Well, this concludes all of the news surrounding the world of Star Trek. I want to thank everybody for listening to our discussions. If you enjoy what you're listening to, please find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify. Search Star Trek from the Holodeck. Also, if you want more discussions, more Star Trek-eccentric discussions, along with dozens of additional podcasts, Please find us on patreon.com/RainmanDigital and pledge $5 or more a month. And by doing so, you're going to gain access to a bunch of premium content where we go into comic books, theories of Star Trek, speculation. We break down the philosophy of Star Trek, the ideology of certain episodes. We actually have a pretty good time when we do those shows.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So head over to patreon.com/RainmanDigital and pledge. And thank you, David.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.
I couldn't help but notice your pain. My pain? It runs deep. Share it with me.
End simulation.